Aloha, inspired money makers. Welcome to Inspired Money, where we talk about everything from mastering your money mindset to investments and more. I'm your host, Andy Wong, financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management, and we've got a great episode lined up. You'll probably hear that I'm getting over a little bit of a cold too, so I will try not to cough during the show. Today, our topic is unlocking the secrets of retirement. And I think it's worth mentioning that last week, Fidelity Investments released its 2024 State of the Retirement Planning Study, which examines how people are viewing and planning for retirement. Just some quick highlights. 2 out of 3 respondents say that the pandemic made them more intentional about focusing on their personal passions and dreams in retirement, with millennials leading the charge at 73%. The traditional retirement no longer holds much appeal for more than half of Gen Z and millennials, who are encouraged by the rise of remote work and are more likely than older generations to travel, relocate to somewhere scenic or abroad, or take a chance to start their own business in retirement. Across generations, 2/3 look forward to pursuing work for pleasure while in retirement and hope for a phased retirement, meaning that they're going to work full-time at first and then part-time before stopping work altogether. So I think it's really interesting, this idea of a new retirement versus the old retirement. And while confidence in retirement is strong among investors, many express regret about not starting their planning earlier. And despite having a pretty high confidence in investments, a common fear is always running out of money in retirement. So retirement planning is very important. And tonight we will address these fears and discuss practical strategies to ensure longevity of retirement funds and peace of mind for years to come. I want to quickly break and say that this episode is brought to you by Seeking Alpha. If you're looking for a tool to track your stock and bond investments, Seeking Alpha can help. It has stock screeners to find new ideas. There are portfolio trackers to give you strong buys and strong sell alerts. And Seeking Alpha also has a quant system that ranks top stock picks. So you'll have access to research from analysts around the world. I have an affiliate link, so you can check it out. Check out to see what the best deal available is. You can go to inspiredmoney.fm/alpha. So we're going to talk all about retirement and enjoying retirement. Let's bring in our panelists. I think that we've got a really diverse group, and it's going to be a very interesting discussion. Let me start with Connie Inukai. She's a retired professor and award-winning inventor known as the Grandmapreneur, advocating entrepreneurship in retirement. With her innovative product, Tip and Split, and her book, Retirement, Dream Big, Take Action, Make Money, she inspires others to pursue their passions and leave a legacy through business ventures. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you.
We have Jamie Hopkins. He's co-director of the New York Life Center for Retirement Income and professor in the Retirement Income Program at the American College of Financial Services. With a background in law, finance, and academia, Jamie is a sought-after speaker and contributor to leading financial publications, shaping the conversation around retirement security and wealth management. I'm impressed by his many credentials. When I go to LinkedIn, like his name with all the credentials, like it takes up like the total width of the screen. Just some highlights: Esquire, Masters of Law, let's see, certified financial planner, chartered life underwriter. I think I'm missing a few, but welcome, Jamie. I'm sorry that I missed a couple.
Yeah, I think I actually have 13, but yeah, too many. But you can see a couple behind me.
Very impressive. And then rounding out the panel this evening, we have Ross Andel, PhD. He's a professor in the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation at Arizona State University, renowned for his research on risk factors for cognitive decline and impairment, with a focus on work, retirement, and cognitive aging. His study of Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia have earned recognition as a former Fulbright Distinguished Chair and election as a Lifetime Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Welcome, Ross.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We're going to hit a lot of different topics. Let's go straight into segment one. Transitioning into retirement goes beyond financial preparation. It includes emotional readiness, solid social connections, and a significant mental shift. Understanding the importance of psychological preparedness, retirees must identify new sources of fulfillment beyond work, developing a sense of purpose in activities and hobbies that resonate on a personal level. Emotional readiness involves adapting to a new self-identity and finding balance in life without the routine of work. Building and maintaining relationships post-retirement can lead to a more satisfying and supportive retirement life. Engaging in community services, joining clubs, or volunteering offers opportunities for social interaction and personal growth. The mental transition from a saving to a spending mindset requires careful adjustment. It involves embracing a new lifestyle that balances financial security with the enjoyment of accumulated wealth. Thoughtful retirement planning ensures a retirement experience that is not only secure, but also rich and fulfilling. Jamie, if you can get us started, how do you advise clients to prepare emotionally and financially for the new retirement reality?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. The interesting thing about retirement, and you'll probably hear it from all three people here today, is that it's so different for everybody. And the way that I like to describe income planning for retirement is it's trying to hit a moving target in the wind, and that your target is what you want in life. So it's going to be, how do you want to live? How do you want to give back to your kids, your alma mater, or your charity? How do what do you want to spend time doing? And then I say, right, it's moving because we don't know how long you're going to be in retirement, right? Can you phase into retirement? Can you work part-time in retirement? Are you forced into retirement? Do you have one day of retirement and get unlucky and pass away a day in? Or do you live 45 years? And so it makes that challenge of distributions very hard because of that. And then the last part, there's wind. And I know that the show notes at the beginning showed some of it, right? Secure Act, Tax Cut and Job Act will expire most likely at the end of 2025 or get re-upped, but there will be changes along the way. So we have to be dynamic in our approach. I like to say, think about, the certainty of today, but with the uncertainty of tomorrow in mind, anytime we're setting up a plan.
Yeah, it's interesting that it is a moving target. And I think that's part of the challenge for a lot of people to wrap their head around. How do you best plan for the uncertainties of tomorrow? Connie, you had a traditional retirement, ending your teaching career at University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins. What surprised you about the transition into retirement?
Oh, I was ready to retire. I had so many dreams because I was a college professor and I was always inspiring my students, engineering students, to pursue their dreams. And I realized that I had a lot of dreams that I hadn't pursued yet. So that's why I retired. And I actually retired because I taught technical writing to engineers, and I taught them how to write reports that would reflect their brilliance. Okay. And, grammatically and everything. And every assignment I gave them was to make them better prepared for their future career. For example, I gave them an assignment to write an instruction manual, because that's what you need to do when you're an engineer. And as I was doing it, I had a little idea in my head about an invention. So I actually wrote my own instruction manual right along with them and learning from them. Then I had them write a brochure for a company that they wanted to work for. And I gave them 6 assignments. So when they were finished, they were well prepared to be in their job. But what I realized is they were going to have these incredible jobs at age 21. And I, with a master's degree, they were going to be earning more than twice my salary with 40 years of experience. So I happily retired so I can pursue my own future.
That's a great exercise. Did you have a plan to become an entrepreneur, or did that come later?
Yeah, well, while they were doing their assignments, I was getting ready for my invention. And actually, my invention was for older people who, if you've gone out with an older person, you know that we have trouble reading a menu because the print is too small and the restaurant's too dark. Yeah. Right. So I invented this product, and it's called Tip and Split, and it has a magnifier on it. It's got a light on the back, and it can also figure out a tip and split the bill in 3 seconds. So I invented it, and I was all ready to go. So that's why I retired.
I love it. Very practical.
Mm-hmm. And people retire for many reasons. Some people retire because they hate working. I actually loved my job, but it inspired me to do some of the things that I was inspiring my students to do. So I was excited to retire.
When you saw the differential between what your students would earn in their first job compared to what you were making, were you able to eclipse your former salary with your new invention?
Yeah, exactly. I was. I was a writing teacher, so I wrote my first book, and it was called How I Got My Product on QVC, The Today Show, The View, and More in my retirement. So cool. I like to dream, and I like to dream big.
It's good to know that your dreams can continue. The retirement doesn't mean that you are, just laying down on the beach and doing nothing.
Exactly. Everybody's got their own idea of retirement. Well, I became an entrepreneur at age 70. And most people would think, what are you doing? Most people want to enjoy it. So my kids say, why don't you just sit down and relax? But I think there's only so much Netflix that you can watch. And I'm very encouraged by being an entrepreneur in my retirement.
Ross, I want to ask you about your research. How does retirement impact cognitive aging? And what is the impact of becoming an entrepreneur at age 70 versus watching Netflix and doing nothing else?
So much. Well, I wrote an article for Entrepreneur magazine, and it's called 6 Reasons to Pursue Entrepreneurship in Your Retirement. One of the reasons is you stay active. Look at me. Actually, I'm 76 years old now, but look at me. Here I am. Okay. It keeps you mentally alert when you have a business in retirement. You're always having to learn new things. So my latest thing is about marketing. My goodness, I grew up with a typewriter. So I have to learn all these things, but I'm not afraid, because when you keep mentally alert, it keeps your brain moving. And I think it might help me prevent dementia. I just can't see me slowing down.
Connie, I'm sorry. This is so awesome. I'm so impressed. There's most of the win is gone from my sales. I was going to talk in those terms, but here we have a living example of someone who successfully retired and did exactly what she was supposed to do. It's congratulations.
Thank you.
I think you're the perfect example of how retirement can be of huge benefit to us. In terms of the cognitive impact, if you look at population studies across the world, you will see that retirement seems to signal a decline, a slightly elevated decline, but this is sort of on the population level. So individually, it's really hard to pinpoint how people will retire and how their trajectory of cognitive aging will continue. Some stay completely, some can maintain their cognitive function. Connie might actually be one of those that actually improves. In 4 years, you could be a super ager. It's a group of individuals, older adults, who do not change in terms of their memory function between the age of 60 and 80. It's this new category that is being studied. So. But others do find that retirement brings a decline, and we really don't have a good handle what that is. There's one theory that seems to be studied quite a bit, is the theory of mental retirement, which actually presents decline as something that occurs when someone decides to retire. So it's not the retirement itself, it's just the decision to retire. So you kind of disengage from your work, you start planning for your retirement, maybe you buy that big chair and bigger screen so you can watch more Netflix that way. But people just sort of disengage, and you see that all of a sudden, 2 years before retirement, there's a change in cognitive function that kind of continues into retirement. But again, it's not necessarily typical, because you have people who successfully transition, particularly if they have a good plan. Meaning in terms of not necessarily in terms of finding new ways to keep the brain going. It's important as well. But what people forget about is the fact that you need to have a structure in your life. You lose structure with your job. Not only that you lose the identity, you can gain a new identity, but the structure, the routine, doing something from Monday through Friday, so that when Saturday comes, you're excited to have a day off. Like if every day is day off, there's really nothing to look forward to. So that could be one of the unexplored areas that we can pursue to really help people retire successfully in terms of cognitive health.
When you talk about cognitive health, I did a lot of research about retirement, and I found that in the first 6 months of retirement is where people start getting all kinds of illnesses, all kinds of ailments. And, so I think that there's a way to combat that. I'm sure I'm going to get, some of the ailments that come with old age, but they're going to have to fight hard to conquer me.
I know it's really a challenge in terms of time management, organization, structure. You're given those things when you're working. You have to work at certain hours and so on. You lose that. So can you really recreate it on your own?
Before you retire, you're working for somebody, and your boss may be annoying. And after you retire, you're your own boss. So I can put up with my own annoyances. So anyway, I have a different attitude about retirement than most people. And because I have a different attitude, I did a TEDx talk. Are you familiar with TEDx talks?
We are.
So my TEDx talk is encouraging retirees and soon-to-be retirees to think about entrepreneurship. And when I gave that talk, I have a lot of people who say, oh my goodness, my dad walks around the house and has nothing to do. I'm going to have him listen to you, because I tell them that, you just, age is a number, and you don't have to think of retirement the old-fashioned traditional way. We can make our own retirement.
It's interesting because I have an uncle, my Uncle Fred, who was a very, very successful professional in an insurance company. He was a portfolio manager at an insurance company. And he came to find that when he retired, he said, you know what? I always had a hard time getting up at 7 a.m. and going to work. He said, the minute that I retired, I was up at 6 a.m. like naturally, because he was really looking forward to the day. And he was doing all the things that he was passionate about. So he was like trading things on eBay. He was buying and selling things off of eBay. He's a collector. He was traveling, and he saw that difference. But it's interesting to see what that mindset is and how that impacts you. Let's go to segment 2.
Estate planning and legacy building ensure your wishes endure, crafting a future that reflects your values. Essential elements include creating wills and establishing trust, guiding asset distribution, and honoring your life's impact. Understanding assets is paramount, enabling intentional decisions for their future handling. It's not just about wealth. It's about the continuation of your legacy through careful planning and clear directives. Family dynamics are integral. Addressing these relationships with clarity prevents disputes and preserves harmony. In addition, minimizing taxes and understanding legal nuances safeguard your estate's value, maximizing the inheritance for your heirs. Philanthropy can also play a significant role in your legacy, allowing your values to extend beyond your lifetime through thoughtful giving and charitable endeavors. Regularly updating your estate plan in response to life's inevitable changes ensures its ongoing relevance and effectiveness. By doing so, you secure not just your assets, but a piece of the future that continues to reflect your wishes and values.
Jamie, with your lawyer hat on, I'm curious, what are important principles that people need to pay attention to when it comes to effective estate planning? And what are common mistakes that people make?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start with one I think that's a little bit more relevant since we're live streaming right now. I'll talk about digital assets. That's probably the one that when I look around is the most common mistake when it comes to estate planning today. And the second most common one is just not having a plan in place. You have the majority of the country really that does not have an up-to-date estate plan in place. And, estate planning is more than just the dollar amounts, the more than your will, your trust, powers of attorney, healthcare, decisions too. I mean, it's down to the values that you want to instill in your kids and loved ones. But digital assets are the biggest mistake. Those rules have really only been in place in most states for the better part of the last, 7 to 3 years. So it's probably one of the fastest things whenever I talk to an attorney, a financial advisor, a client, that I can pinpoint your stuff is not up to date, because I ask people, well, when is the last time you updated your trust or your will? And somebody says 8 years ago. I look up their state and I know that the rules didn't exist before then. So you have to update it. And the interesting part of how those rules came up, I'll give an example. So you have this podcast, it probably kicks into an email. We're using StreamYard, has a login. The videos are being stored in there. When you click through originally and set these things up, you went through some term of service agreement. We call TOSA, so that long agreement you scroll to the bottom of as fast as humanly possible and say, I agree to everything. And what you mostly agree, and all those everything, digital, it essentially says you don't own the assets. That's the short answer. And I'm overly simplifying that, but 90% of the time it says you have a lifetime lease to this digital property. If you are to die, you can't leave it to anybody. And so the mistake that a lot of people make with business assets and other things out there today is they actually set all this stuff up personally, that when you logged into your email originally for Gmail, that might be where all your business stuff goes, but you set that up under a personal name. So when you die, that's attached to you. It wasn't set up in the business. You can't pass that to anybody else. That's a contractual agreement. It doesn't matter what the state does. It doesn't matter what your will says. Doesn't matter what your trust says. That's a contractual agreement you agreed to outside of those. What your wills, your trust documents can say now is that you can give a fiduciary access to these types of digital assets for the purpose of wrapping them up. So essentially to pull maybe copyrighted information out, to shut down accounts, to delete things, to download stuff that you might have a right to. But that's a huge mistake going on out there today. So I head up the wealth and trust team at a company called Bryn Mawr Trust. We're 125-year trust company, and we do this a lot for financial advisory firms. So we come in as corporate trustee, and we do it for individuals too. But that's a huge mistake out there, almost across the board, because it's so new. And if you think about who's still in mass dying today, it's people in their 80s and 90s. They don't have as many digital assets as the next 10 years of people who will be passing away have. And so you're going to see more issues with this than we just haven't had that many cases around it. There are cases, but there will be substantial ones over the next 10 to 20 years where people own podcasts, blogs that are generating tons of revenue that all of a sudden you find out you can't leave to anybody. And, some other company is now picking that up. And so that's a scary proposition.
That is really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering if Connie, as a grandmapreneur, how do you view the role of estate planning and entrepreneurship in shaping your legacy?
Well, I think that I'm different from most normal people about that, because my kids want me to save up for retirement, and I say I am retired. what can I want to spend it. So when you have a business, I have 2 businesses going on now. And when you have a business, sometimes you have to invest, like to have people help you. And so my son hates that I spend money on my business, but I'm spending it on my business, first of all, because I don't have a lot of time. I don't have like 40 years. Well, maybe, but I'm pretty sure I don't. But I think that by investing in myself and my business, I have the chance to leave much more to my survivors than I would if I didn't, So I'm actually trying to make a big, I'm making a big investment on my new business. And my kids would prefer that I didn't spend any money and just save it. And, I have to tell all retirees, you ought to think like me. Like, we deserve it. We don't have to save it up for everyone else. I'm having the time of my life running businesses. So I'm spending it on my businesses. I'd rather spend it on my businesses than have a Mercedes.
I think that you might be ahead of your time, because in the Fidelity study that I referenced in the introduction, that's what they're talking about as a trend today, that it's more likely that people are defining retirement not as stopping working completely, but perhaps starting a business and doing things that they care about.
Exactly. I couldn't do it before because I, as a college professor, I'm sure you all know, going to college, you pull all-nighters to do your reports and to study for exams. Well, I was pulling all-nighters for 40 years. I would stay up and grade papers. And so now I get to do what I want to do. I wake up just like your uncle. I wake up early every morning, excited about what I'm going to do next.
Unfortunately, I did my share of all-nighters. I did not break up my work trying to write 2 pages per day for 2 weeks. I waited until the night before, and then the real motivation kicked in.
Yeah, I used to do once a week. I would pull 2 all-nighters to grade all of the students' papers. Yeah.
Ross, in the context of cognitive aging, is the key to address estate planning early before potential cognitive challenges begin?
Well, absolutely. I think the decline in cognitive acuity is a big factor in just how one ends up aging, the satisfaction with their own aging, and this can really affect family relationships. So yeah, early planning is very important. Jamie's talking about kind of pre-planning for some of those new challenges, including these digital assets. I mean, if you start losing your reasoning ability, your executive functioning, speed of processing, it becomes much more difficult to actually navigate this. So early planning sounds like really a good idea. The video also, so that's one aspect here. I actually wanted to comment on the video itself, if that's okay.
Sure.
And in terms of altruism, distributing funds, it's a really important psychological aspect of aging. When people, as they age, if they feel like they can actually contribute in different ways, they end up being much more satisfied with their lives. And it's particularly noticeable, in that middle age to and the transition to older adulthood, just around the time when people retire. If you don't have that aspect of your life where you're really, where you feel like you can be altruistic, you're distributing your resources in a certain way, you're contributing more than just to your own immediate family, but to society at large, then once you actually get into old age, it's just a different feeling. It's Erickson was a researcher way back when, developed these stages that are really rough, but he talks about this generativity versus stagnation, that you can't really enjoy old age unless you have that phase in your life where you are altruistic.
Jamie, I see you nodding. Did you want to weigh in either the cognitive decline in planning or the altruism?
Well, yeah, I've got maybe 3 quick things. I'll try not to drag on for too long, but yeah, the one, I mean, look, the cognitive decline part too, just legally, if you start declining, that can be a challenge point for the documents you create at that point. So like, just from a legal standpoint, like you absolutely want to do it earlier, not later, just from even the validity of the documents. It also represents like a risk, which you see today, right? Digital theft and fraud is the highest it's ever been. And it's going to get worse and worse. That one's not on a decline. The next 5 years of our lives, that's going to become a scarier and scarier proposition. And so some of this pre-planning, right? Giving fiduciaries access, ensuring the, dual authentication, all of that digital protection mechanisms, I think is super important. And yeah, the altruistic part's really interesting because I presented on something else earlier today, and there's actually 18% of retirees say they're unwilling to cut back any charitable gifts from their spending. So there's a very core group that says like this is an essential expense for retirement. Because if you really look at from like a number standpoint, you go to a financial advisor, right? Like absolutely you can cut your charitable gifts. But it's really interesting that 18% of the population says they're unwilling to cut that at all. And it kind of goes to that point, like it's so tied to meaning and kind of moving up that hierarchy of needs to that, financial freedom, altruistic, finding your aspiration level. And if you don't have that, you kind of can't, and I do agree with that, you can't get to that maybe last stage of enlightenment without it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's more than just looking at the balance sheet and saying cut expenses. There is a meaning and purpose there. So it can be significant. Let's move to segment 3.
The shift from full-time work to full-time leisure marks a significant change in life's rhythm. This adjustment requires redefining daily routines, engaging in meaningful activities, and reorienting personal identity away from professional achievements. Whether it's pursuing hobbies, volunteering, or learning new skills, it's about creating a balanced lifestyle that brings satisfaction and structure. Adapting to this new phase involves more than just finding ways to pass the time. It's about discovering new facets of yourself and developing a post-work identity that brings joy and fulfillment. Expanding social networks through clubs, classes, or community involvement can offset the isolation often experienced after leaving the workforce. Embracing this transition with positivity and openness leads to a richer, more rewarding retirement. By planning financially, staying active in body and mind, and seeking out new experiences, retirees can turn this chapter into one of the most fulfilling periods of their lives.
Ross, what does the research say about the transition from work to leisure? How does that impact cognitive function?
Yeah, so that's a very important aspect, obviously. I know there's a little bit of research, including my own, looking at the transition to retirement with high cognitive activity in leisure versus not. It does seem to compensate. You might go from a job that's not all that fulfilling to reporting a lot of leisure and social activities in retirement. And some up to 20 years later, after your retirement, your cognitive function might be about the same as someone who had a great engaging job. And even they continue to engage, but you are actually going to catch up to them after having a job that's not that fulfilling, as long as you're that active in retirement. So, but it's just one study, basically. Obviously, more research is needed, but that engagement is very important. So, having sort of that plan where okay, I'm not going to just sit on the couch, or I'm so tired of working. I just need a couple months off, and then I'll start thinking and planning what I actually want to do in retirement. That work, I also did a TEDx talk specifically on this topic, as Andy knows, and this is sort of the retirement trap where that you can fall into. That it's normally you work Monday through Friday, and you're looking forward to Saturday, Sunday, where you take time off. In this case, you're just looking to retirement, which is your Saturday, Sunday over and over, and then you go, okay, once I get enough Saturdays and Sundays in a row, I'll start planning what I'll actually do. And that's a huge mistake. That's where retirement is basically a trap. But if you can pre-plan and say, okay, look, I have all these great ideas, like, Connie is just perfect for this panel for sure. like, I have all these ideas, I have my plan in place right now. I just need to retire to actually, implement my plan. Well, that's perfect. If you can do that, then your retirement is likely to be much more successful.
Connie, you mentioned having a different definition of retirement and almost feeling a need to convince others that they can see it your way. Like, what advice would you give to a retiree struggling to find joy and fulfillment in their new phase of life?
Well, I think of retirement not just about money, but a retirement lifestyle. So I think you got that from what I'm doing. I love that segment that you did about, transitioning from work to leisure. Well, leisure doesn't have, I'm going to say from work to passion. And I guess that that's what I feel. We all have a passion, but maybe our mindset is, just watch TV and sit on the couch. But I know too many people who are retired. And I guess if you have a little plan right before you retire, like I had a little plan, if you have a plan of what you actually want to do for your passion, I'd say that's great.
Entrepreneurship can take a lot of time and energy. Do you take time for leisure? Do you take vacations? Does that look different today than it did when you were working for a university?
I have 7 grandchildren. So I have and I call myself Grandmapreneur because grandma comes first. And I have a lot of time for my grandchildren. And that's the most fun thing I do. Like my 8-year-old granddaughter slept over last night. And I'm so excited. And we actually took a walk at 8:00 at night because she's afraid of the dark. So I said, come on, hold my hand. Let's go take a walk around. To me, that's leisure.
I love that. Those are special moments that you have to take advantage of.
And so that's something that I couldn't have done when I was pulling all-nighters to grade papers. I would have said, I can't do it. But now I'm the boss of my time. And I'll choose to do what I want to do.
Well said. Jamie, how can retirees create a balance between a lifestyle that promotes both satisfaction and financial security?
Yeah, and I don't think this is just for retirees either. And I think parts of it came through in Connie and Ross's is like you actually do have to figure this out while working. I mean, Connie did, and she had a drive for it. And you heard like mentally retiring is this really interesting concept, and quiet quitting is probably somewhat tied to that. And an interesting thing I started thinking about not too long ago was actually approaching the retirement decision like a change project management situation. And it's really interesting because if you look at change management, it's like the exact situation that we're talking about when we come to retirement is that we have this pre-phase, we're going to have this change phase, and then an ultimate like new phase. And most retirement planning does not approach a change management like type process there, like ADCAR or any of those things. And, while I would say I don't know many advisors using that today to help with this, I have started talking to people about this and kind of looking at, are there elements of that we can wrap in here? Because successful change management works really well. And yeah, like we don't want to think of ourselves as a change management project, but we are, right? Because we have to find some new meaning. And it's funny, like Connie definitely lives. So I have one just like she does, but I have a different, not my most current book, but I have one called Rewirement, and that's a trademark term. But it was this idea that we need to rewire the way we think when we move to retirement, because we move from this saving accumulation mindset to this decumulation spending mindset. And where do we find that balance in life is, really important. And so whether it's replacing the structure of work with structure of retirement or enjoyment of giving back with something new, we do need to find that. I don't know all the research as well as Ross does there, but we talk about, I think one of the stats actually in your first video showed that there is a larger percentage of retirees that end up depressed than the general population that sits in depression. But when you look at the total population of retirees, they're happier than the average person, because you get this move upward of a lot of people happier, but then you get this other group that actually becomes depressed. And so then on average, it's like, hey, everybody's happier in retirement, but it's not true. Like, you have a group that's happier and a group that's more depressed. And that group that's more depressed, when you start looking at it, they are lacking a lot of those things: structure, connection. We have the least amount of people, right, in the United States right now that have 3 close friends than ever before. And, obviously that's the correlation to things, but you see higher levels of depression with fewer levels of friends, higher levels of suicide, drug abuse, all of those things start to kind of connect there. So find connection to people, and be purposeful about your community. In my most recent book, I wrote a whole chapter on that. Is we end up in a lot of accidental communities throughout life, like your job. All 3 of us, Ross, myself, Connie, all taught. And so that became part of our community. But to some degree, it was accidental. Like, I didn't pick the other professors that I became really close with. They were just around me. When you get to retirement, though, you have to be more purposeful in your communities and what role you're going to play in that community. Connie's an inventor and an entrepreneur, and that's the role she's playing. She's building. Other people are going to be more followers or, partaking in the community, not designing it. But you should be purposeful in whatever of those avenues in your community you're going to take.
I have a question. This is for Jamie. So, Jamie, you're kind of young, and because of your profession about retirement and financial planning, have you thought about your retirement and what you want to do?
Yeah, hopefully I'll end up like you and never retire. That's my long-term goal. But some of the things I used to think about, I don't think will be the case. So I've written 8 books. And my thought was always, like, up until like 2 years ago, like, well, eventually I'll like kind of retire and write books. And nowadays I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure that like the generative AI has replaced my retirement plan of writing books. So I'm going to come up with something else. It probably won't be that anymore. But yeah, I actually wrote movie scripts. That was my very first job. As I wrote a horror movie and a comedy movie. I would say I don't think generative AI is very close to writing quality movie scripts. So that might be one. At least I can go into the film world or something. I have a friend's dad who actually has won a couple major awards, built up 3 companies, retired at 70, and started spending his money on developing movies, and has done very, very well. Had no movie interaction before that. Is actually one of his movies is actually up, or was, it just happened. He did not win, but was up for an Academy Award, started after 70. So that's maybe one.
Another success story. Let's move to
segment. It sounds like you have passion for that. And so when you have passion for what you do, it will be so much fun to spend time doing it in your retirement. Yeah, I was curious about somebody who's helping others with retirement planning. Have you thought about yours? But it seems like you have an inkling of what you might want to do. So I want to hear from you in 30 years.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Let's move to segment 4.
Tax planning for retirement is crucial for safeguarding financial stability and enhancing income. By understanding the tax implications of various retirement funds and employing strategic withdrawal techniques, retirees can reduce their tax liabilities. Effective strategies include Roth conversions, allowing tax-free withdrawals in retirement, and organizing withdrawals to lower overall tax impact. Incorporating charitable contributions into your tax planning not only supports worthy causes, but can also reduce your taxable income. Opting for qualified charitable distributions from your IRA can satisfy minimum distribution requirements while remaining non-taxable. Understanding how to maneuver within tax brackets and the benefits of residing in tax-friendly states can further reduce tax burdens. In addition, estate planning ensures your assets transfer to heirs with minimal tax implications. With proper tax planning, you can enjoy the fruits of your labor without undue tax stress. Consult with a tax professional to tailor these strategies to your unique financial situation, minimizing taxes and optimizing your retirement.
I like that fist bump at the end. Jamie, what are your key tax planning strategies that you recommend to retirees to really efficiently manage their wealth in retirement?
Yeah, I'll do 4. I presented on this today to clients, so it's fresh in my mind. And these 4 are because I think they apply to most people. And I'll throw out a couple stats too. So on average, effective federal tax rate is only about 5% when you blend it across the entire retiree population. So a lot of Americans, it's not as big of a deal as you think it would be. The top 5% is closer to 21%. So it's the more money you have, the more of a challenge this part becomes. There's 4 things that I think apply to almost everybody. First one, I just talked about tax diversification, is having different assets and income sources that are taxed differently. So tax-free assets, a Roth, an HSA, life insurance, home equity access, something in that vein. Tax deferred, which most people are probably more familiar with. It's where most of America's retirement assets sit. So traditional IRAs, pension plans, and 401k defined contribution plans. And then I would also just, so those are kind of like the main 2. Then taxable, that would be like just some of your savings, maybe in a brokerage account, in a taxable account. You might have a mutual fund, it's kicking out distributions. Maybe you have an income source, also a different version. Long-term capital gains falls into that bucket too. It's good to diversify across those, and maybe I'll stop after this one. Main reason is because we do not know where tax rates are going in the future. Almost everybody gets this wrong when you try to predict it. If you go back to 2010, there was pretty much consensus across America that tax rates would be increasing. You fast forward 14 years and tax rates have essentially been lower across that time horizon. Presumably, we could get Tax Cut and Job Act extended, depending on how election goes. You could actually see another round of tax cuts, depending on the election. So we could go 20 years with almost every American and professional that would try to pick out the future being wrong about where tax rates were going. And so why does that matter? Well, it matters because you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket here, where let's say the government comes in 5 years and says, look, we're changing the rules on long-term capital gains, and long-term capital gains in the US will now be taxed at a high tax rate, higher than ordinary income. There are lots of countries in the world that actually tax capital gains higher than ordinary income. We're not one of them, but there's nothing wrong from a tax policy standpoint on making that change. But if you planned your whole retirement about having long-term capital gains at 15 to 20%, you wake up in 5 years and they're all taxed at 50%, you could have a very difficult retirement by putting essentially, right, all the eggs in one basket. So you don't want to be subject to the risk of one tax rule changing and that disrupting your entire plan.
Great advice. Ross, in your opinion, how does financial stress related to market volatility and taxes, how does that impact our cognitive health in retirement?
Oh, this is a socioeconomic status question. That's where most of the research is. There's a really sort of well-established theory of allostatic load, and it basically says that stress related to constant issues with money changes your physiology. Your brain starts to function differently. You start producing these fight or flight hormones that are damaging your cardiovascular system. They're suppressing your immune system, and eventually, they really accelerate aging on any level. It's not just brain aging, but it's physical aging in general. So reducing allostatic load and keeping the body in a certain balance requires financial fitness. If I want to put it that way, and it's something that's really difficult to even see. You see one study after another pointing out to socioeconomic status impacting people to such a great extent across these different health outcomes with age.
Interesting.
there's not as much research, within one socioeconomic bracket, those who are, financially fit and maybe just make mistakes, which could be, just as stressful, I imagine. But as far as, having support, research support, I don't have it. I don't think there is much on that, but it's probably similar to, again, putting someone completely out of whack physiologically. It's really not just sort of the psychological issue, like, yeah, I don't feel great today because I made that bad investment. It really just changes your physiology, and you end up like, being chased by a lion constantly almost. That's kind of how the body feels. It generates the same fight or flight response in your body that becomes kind of chronic, permanent.
It's interesting how the financial health is tied so closely to physical health.
Yeah.
I had a client who came to me after the financial crisis, and I'm convinced that he was so hard on himself after seeing his portfolio, drop 40%. And it was at that point that he came to me for help. But I think about a year later, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and not long after passed away. But I think it's because he had this financial stress and didn't even blame the advisor or broker he was working with previously. He blamed himself. And I think that he was very tough on himself in that way. Connie, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner in retirement, I suspect that there are some tax advantages to owning your business in retirement. Any strategies that you can share to minimize taxes?
I let my children take care of that. I do the fun things. That's what I do in my retirement. I focus on the fun things, and my kids know more about taxes than I do.
That's good. So it's good to have kids.
Yes.
And then how about for the altruism? Any charitable contributions, or like how important is that to you?
That's actually a very good question, because most people, when they retire, they want to give back to the community. So the first thing I ever gave back to was I donate to the American Macular Degeneration Foundation. Now, I don't have it, but I know of it. And somebody heard about my tip and split, and they thought it might be really good for people who have poor vision. So I started donating tip and splits to them and some money every year. And it makes me feel great. And actually, they really didn't have much of a social media presence, and they wrote their first blog about me because, I don't have macular degeneration, but I'm aware of it and I want to support it. So I think most people, when they retire, they tend to do a lot of volunteer work.
It's a good reminder that giving is not a one-way street. It's not just benefiting the recipient, but it also benefits
Exactly
the giver too. So let's bring it home and go to segment 5.
Embracing a retirement mindset is crucial for transitioning from structured work life to leisure and freedom. It involves recognizing this new chapter as an opportunity for growth, exploration, and fulfillment. Adapting means moving beyond past routines and embracing new experiences with an open heart and mind. Fostering a growth mindset enables you to view retirement as a time to develop new skills, hobbies, and relationships. It's about transforming challenges into opportunities for personal development and discovering new passions. Resilience becomes key in adjusting to the emotional and social challenges retirement can bring. Bounce back from the loss of work identity and build a new sense of self rooted in activities and communities that bring joy and purpose. Cultivating social ties and engaging with community activities combat loneliness and keep you mentally stimulated. Whether it's learning, traveling, or volunteering, defining objectives keeps you focused and fulfilled. Cultivating a retirement mindset geared towards adaptability, growth, and connection ensures a vibrant and rewarding retirement journey.
Ross, I think that you touched upon this earlier. It's like the mindset, just preparing for retirement can have an impact on your body and your cognitive resilience. Are there strategies that we can all be doing now, even if we are not retiring for another 10, 15, 20 years?
I think so. I think it's just a general understanding of the fact that retirement is not one long vacation, that it has to have a purpose. Jamie already mentioned that as well. There needs to be purpose. There needs to be a plan as you go into it, and that plan can start now. Like, what will I be doing when I retire? When do I roughly, give or take, when do I want to retire, and what I want to be doing when I retire? It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you actually have to implement that plan. You can change that plan as you go, but having one means that you're seriously thinking about it as opposed to just going into it unprepared. That is really hugely important. If I can, the video I thought again was great. All 5 of them were wonderful. This one, understanding that what retirement mindset means is having the resilience to enter that stage of life and make those adjustments. Retirement is a huge life transition, maybe bigger than people realize, and then be able to adapt to what comes. So, just again, I was really happy to see that the video mentioned those the resilience part. The adaptation, I think, is just kind of ties into the resilience. So you pre-plan, you get ready as soon as you can. Go into the retirement with a plan so that you have a new routine that keeps you busy, say those 5 days a week, so that again you have that wonderful weekend to look forward to, and then you adapt as you go.
Great points. Let's ask Connie, because I think she's done it. Connie, how did you cultivate a flexible retirement mindset that has allowed you to adapt not only to the unknowns of entrepreneurship, but to retirement?
Mindset is a very interesting word. And, I meet a lot of coaches who all talk about mindset. But, and they say that's the most important thing when you have a business, is to have the positive mindset. But I think that everybody has a choice. Now, people don't have to do what I do. They have so many choices. Some people really in retirement want to travel. That's not my choice. But people don't have to do what I do. So I think that when you're retired, you should know what you're getting into. You should think about what you want to do and how you want to live. And I think that's what mindset is about. And when I wrote my book called Retirement, Dream Big, Take Action, Make Money. And I interviewed 10 people who were second act entrepreneurs. They had retired from one job and then they started doing something that they loved in their retirement. And I learned a lot from them. Okay, one of the people I interviewed is actually, he was a lawyer, and now he has Parkinson's disease. So most people might think that that's horrible. Well, it is horrible. But what he's doing now is what he really wants to do, which is music. And he plays the guitar because it's helping to keep his muscles active. And he's actually starting a course for guitar playing for people with Parkinson's disease. So people find their true passion sometimes in retirement. Okay, so I have, I interviewed another person who worked in the police department in Virginia, and she always loved horses, and one of her somebody in prison at the time was one of the snipers. I don't know if you are familiar with the snipers in Washington, D.C.
Yes, I remember.
Well, she got to the young sniper, Lee John Malvo, became very infatuated with her. And he actually drew a picture of him on a horse. And that's how he would pass his time. So she retired from a very exciting job, and now she has a horse farm. And people just, it's a lot of work. My goodness, a horse farm. She has to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning to feed the horses. but she loves it. So sometimes I guess I don't like the word mindset for this. I choose a choice. You get to choose what you want to do in your retirement.
Thank you. Jamie, what are common challenges that you see clients going through when they're transitioning to retirement?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that I see, I'll mention a financial one, and you probably see this, Andy, too, is this notion that like I should spread all my stuff around everywhere, because it's kind of like some of the stuff we talked about before, like you're told that you should diversify your investments and tax diversification. And so I see people kind of just move stuff everywhere. And it actually becomes a really inefficient financial picture. It's not well coordinated together. That's a big, like very general financial planning mistake that a lot of Americans make because they're taking a concept that they otherwise think makes sense in most of their life, and they apply it to one scenario where it really doesn't work that well. And I think some of the other ones are behavioral, and I'll kind of shift a little bit. Is this and I think Ross, you're probably fairly familiar with this researcher, Hal Hershfield is out your way at UCLA. I don't know if you know Hal well too. I see you laughing, but know who he is, right? Yeah. And but Hal's done really cool research with a couple of people over the years on this like connectedness to your future self. And it kind of ties a lot of the stuff that we were talking about today, is having this clear picture of like who you're going to be in the future and visualizing it, writing down things like your values and aspirations. Most people have not done that by the time they've got into retirement in any formal way. There's a lot of positive research around some of those concepts about creating this connectedness to a future self, and that you're actually able, to follow through on better savings. And actually there was some at a UPenn on eating and exercise, and it did have some improvements there. Exercise, everybody always quits eventually anyways, but it had some short-term benefits there. I think everybody dropped out of their exercise routine at the end of the study, but they stayed in it longer.
That means it's a realistic study.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks everybody. Thank you to the panelists for joining today. I think just some quick takeaways is that as we think about retirement, it's really about things that we can think about and do now. Because what I heard throughout the conversation today is that identifying your values, what matters to you, things that you're passionate about, that you want to be doing, because how different is that to what you're doing today? And perhaps the sooner that you can get to doing things that you enjoy, the better. It'll make the transition easier. Other things were just redefining retirement, what it means to you. For some, it will mean sitting on the beach. For others, it will mean doing volunteer work. For others, it can be starting a business and really going to work in retirement in a different way. So I want to thank all the Inspired Moneymakers for tuning in today. I encourage you to check out more and follow the panelists. You can find Jamie Hopkins at hopkinsretirement.com. Jamie, I don't know if you want to also leave the trust company's website too.
Yeah, brimartrust.com is the trust company. And then actually I also put I do run a nonprofit in the financial service world that works with 35 colleges and universities, since we have 3 former and current professors on here. And we actually help students transition into the workforce there with coaching and mentorship and scholarships. So it's a great program for college students looking to get into the workforce.
I have a pretty good feeling that Jamie will not be slowing down in retirement. He's going to have like 64 books and like his nonprofit and many other things.
He's going to be a film producer.
Right. He's going to be making his films. We look forward to him accepting his Academy Award. Connie Inukai, you can find her at ConnieInukaiAuthor.com or Grandmapreneur.com. And Dr. Ross Andel, you can find him. He's at Arizona State University. So go to asu.edu. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Join us next week, Wednesday, March 27th. I'm pretty sure that we're going to have to move to an earlier time. We're not going to be at 6 p.m. We may be at noon or 1 p.m. And we're going to continue the retirement conversation. We're talking about effective retirement income strategies, securing your financial future. And our panelists, I think, will include Wade Pfau, Professor of Retirement Income at the American College of Financial Services. We've got Colleen Giaconetti from Vanguard Investment Advisory Research Center, author Emily Guy Birkin, I think she has 5 books, but she's written The 5 Years Before You Retire, Choose Your Retirement, Making Social Security Work for You. And then I think that we will have Stephen Chen, who is founder and CEO at New Retirement. So please be sure to join us next week. Until then, go out and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everybody.